With the very impending release of Assassin's Creed Mirage, which is actually a week earlier now, and oh my god, that means I have to rearrange my upload plans just to get this video out even sooner. Oh, fuck. Sorry. Anyway, I've had a particular thought lingering in the back of my mind. See, in Mirage, main character Basim is not a new character. He was Eivor's assassin contact in Valhalla, since she was not an assassin herself. This is not the first time the series has done this, either. Edward Kenway of Black Flag first appeared in the extended material for Assassin's Creed 3 as the father of Haytham Kenway, who forgot his pirate swashbuckling skills at a crucial moment, getting stabbed to death. So I was thinking about a bunch of other pre-existing Assassin's Creed characters I think could lead interesting games on their own. I tried to pick a good mix of characters from various points in time and various entries of the series for variety's sake. Thankfully, I'm quite versed in the series, knowledge I've also used covering each game in depth in my video series, A Briefish History of Assassin's Creed. Maybe check those out if you haven't. I work hard on those. Anyway, here's 10 of them. Here's 10 characters that already exist in Ass Creed and could maybe make for a cool game of their own, perhaps. So for numero 10, that's the Japanese number for 10. Not really sure why I put it next to Spanish numero. That was very unclear for me to do that. I'm going with Lydia Frye. She was a surprise character in Assassin's Creed Syndicate in an extra sliver of the game taking place in 1916 London, and her whole bit was neat. It showed how you could absolutely move Assassin's Creed into the World War era by making stealth extra necessary due to the presence of snipers, which coincidentally was also used in Chronicles Russia, taking place in the following year 1917, and I have conveniently covered recently. That's right, shameless self-promotion twice in a row now. Story-wise, her stuff could also be quite useful for elaborating on something in the lore I want clarified. See, back in 2, the truth revealed the Templars were puppeteering World War II with explicit mention of Hitler, Churchill, and FDR being under their sway. But it wasn't explicit how in on the conspiracy any of them were back then. Complicating matters, Lydia was tasked during World War I by Churchill to take out some spies that, turns out, are Templar aligned. So either Churchill would later be won over by the Templars, assuming he knows, or they just got better at manipulating him, assuming he doesn't. Because of his less-than-couth opinions on racial minorities, imperialism, Jewish people, and allowing Indian people to starve to death because he didn't like them, and I quote, breeding like rabbits, I think this hypothetical Lydia game would be most interesting, showing Churchill as a morally negative person, with the Templars using his worst attributes to coyly manipulate him, with him being in the dark about the whole affair, since that creates an applicable meta-narrative about how hateful beliefs are used by opportunists at the expense of the hater and their hatee alike. But honestly, any clarification for his exact role in things would be nice. In addition to being able to explore Lydia's working relationship with Churchill further, it would also give us a chance to see how the Frye Brotherhood developed further. I'll save the spoilers for the appropriate briefish history videos in the near-ish future, but the last we saw the Frye twins in Syndicate's DLC was a pretty dour and downbeat exploration of their own failures. So seeing the next generation recovering under their leadership would be a pleasant development too. My next choice is one I have really come to appreciate more on replays as I have gotten a bit older. That is Black Flag's Ottobai. I never disliked him, but back in college I really just glossed over him as a necessary element, and I didn't think much further about him. For Edward Kenway to eventually join the Assassins, there needs to be someone leading the local brotherhood. Now though, Ottobai resonates with me a lot more. This dude shows so much maturity dealing with Edward. Edward had been nothing but an obnoxious little thorn in the side of both the Assassins and the Templars for a while. So for Ottobai to go out of his way to keep giving him chances despite all of the devastation Edward brought right to his doorstep shows just how much self-control this guy is capable of. He is a Maya assassin, so it would give a great opportunity to explore a culture I don't know a ton about. His younger years in the late 1600s are also mostly unexplored by the canon, so it's a nice blank slate. This would be a great setup to explore more anti-imperialist themes, which, spoiler alert, Baneshake's Charlie is all for. Finally, this series always likes to play archaeologist, and going back to ancient Maya structures would fulfill that role quite nicely. Third of 10, I'm picking Darius. He's been kicking around in Assassin's Creed canon for quite a while. He was one of the assassins entombed in Assassin's Creed 2, and was the first user of a hidden blade, which he used to take out King Xerxes in Persia, which we briefly got to witness when Cassandra teamed up with him in Odyssey's DLC, and also fucked his son. That is to say, Cassandra fucked his son. I didn't mean to imply anything else. While Darius was technically only a proto-assassin since the group didn't officially form until Ptolemaic Egypt, he is an honorary assassin all the same because his descendant Aya received his teachings directly when she and Bayek did form the Hidden Ones. I just want to see all of his stuff in Persia play out in a game. For one, this series was almost a Prince of Persia game in the first place, and talked about it way back when I started that series. Boom, third shameless self-promotion. Now the audience is going to click on him for sure. But I also just think it would be very dynamic storytelling from what we do know about him. Seeing him form his group of proto-assassins and then witnessing the tragedy of his group splintering against the Order of the Ancients would be a compelling tragedy to experience firsthand. For 4, Yoni Hyota. She is Radun Hagedun, aka Connor's daughter, introduced in the comics. The optimist in me wants to believe they introduced her so that Connor could be given more of a happy ending than the bittersweet events of 3 allowed, but the pessimist in me suspects they created her to soft-launch the ability to see through an eagle's eyes before the game started doing the same thing as a way to divert complaints from the inevitable complainers. Either way though, she's a good opportunity for more of the types of themes I enjoyed so much in 3. See, despite some pre-release fears that 3 would be a jingoistic America, fuck yeah, clown show, it was actually a nuanced depiction of decently realistic American history, barring the Greco-Roman holograms and the Tyrant George Washington alt timeline. It very effectively showed the founding of the US of A as both something with idealistic intentions from some founders, while also being severely hampered by the worst tendencies of said founders. Going with Yoni Hyota could at least give a couple decades breathing space from 3 to explore significantly different events in new locations, but would also allow us to still check in and see how characters like Connor or Aveline are getting on. Yes, I realize this is thematically bordering on my justifications for Lydia Frye earlier in the video. No, you are not allowed to call me out on it. Thanks. Number 5 is really leaning into the series' alternate history here because we're going with a historical figure who was also playable. Over in Chronicles Russia again, not a shameless plug this time, it's relevant, there was a surprise secondary playable character, none other than Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna, who accidentally gets possessed by the skills, memories, and occasionally full-on personality of Xiao Jun, the Chinese assassin Ezio met centuries earlier. It makes sense in context. Okay, now it's shameless self-promo. I'm picking Anastasia for a handful of reasons, but the most prominent is that the way that game ended with her left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. See, they have her escaping under the pseudonym of a different, real, historical woman who claimed to be Anastasia, Anna Anderson, but we knew she was never the real Anastasia years before they wrote this game, and it all felt in very poor taste. Following the fictional version of Anastasia further would simply help separate this depiction from the real person, as it implied there in Chronicles. Story reasons could also be fun with this setup though. She flees Russia from both the Templars and the Assassins for plot reasons, so we could start out the game literally as a lone third party trying to avoid 2 massive secret conspiracies. That sounds interesting. Further, and this one is me really making a wild swing for something out there, I have a pitch for a proper bonkers game, the way only Assassin's Creed could do it. So, picking up on the thread mentioned under Churchill earlier, Hitler's death was supposed to be faked with a body double to end World War II under the Templars' terms, but we know from Assassin's Creed 2 that the assassins would successfully take him out before he could rendezvous with Churchill. We still haven't seen that happen yet, though. if we had a game where Anastasia slowly learns to trust a different European branch of the Brotherhood, not trying to steal her brain, it makes sense in context, we could absolutely make the timeline line up to let Anastasia be the person to kill Hitler. If you didn't notice, I like it when the series gets really fucking weird. Ubisoft, that one is free. Please, steal my idea. 6 of 10 is much less in-depth than some of the other ideas, as I would mostly like to address a random plot thread Assassin's Creed introduced and then promptly abandoned. Patience Gibbs. She was introduced in a teensy tiny little DLC for Black Flag, getting rescued by Aveline de Grand Prix, and she has some sort of Isu tech in her medallion that lets her see just a few seconds into the future. This seems like it could be something cool, both for plot reasons and as a gameplay mechanic. Imagine playing as Patience, and then instead of eagle vision, they somehow incorporated teensy tiny little future glimpses, like, don't step there, that walkway is about to collapse in this Uncharted-style set piece. Or, that guard's future self Glimmer is attacking, counter now before he strikes at all. Or stuff like that. I'd be here for it. If you played Unity, do you remember the guy in the recolored Altair robes in the prologue who assassinates you in first person? Of course you do, that's the best part of the game. That dude is Tamal Carneon, and I want to see more of him. For one, France needs another chance at some good historical representation, because Unity really shitted itself, failing to show authentic French history in an interesting way. For 2 though, there's something of an interesting untold story just from the details we can observe about Tommy here. In addition to wearing the same style of robes as the Levantine assassins, in a blink and you'll miss it moment, he is missing his ring finger, even though Altair had altered the Hidden Blade's design a few decades prior to eliminate the defingerization. Now there are 2 possible reasons behind this. One is that they copied Altair and just didn't do the lore math. That answer is not exciting, but it is possible, considering Unity. The more exciting answer is that this group of the assassins are simply refusing to let go of tradition, even when that tradition comes with a cost. It's not the only time in the canon we see this happen. The Spanish assassins in the movie have held on to the practice all the way into the Spanish Inquisition a few centuries later. Right there, we already have a starting point. Tell a story centered around the theme of refusing to give up a now meaningless tradition, and you could actually use Tamal Carneon to have a message directly connected to the nothing is true half of the Assassin's Creed. As we get closer to the end of the list, I'm going to look back at that diverse sanctuary of multinational assassins, because there's another character I think is due time for exploration. Most of the characters represented here have been explored further at this point. There's Darius, whom I already talked about. Iltani poisoned Alexander the Great and had her own group of proto-assassins, but the broad strokes are just similar enough to Darius that online dweebuses might have called me lazy if I picked her too. Wei Yu took out the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, but will be some degree of supporting role in Assassin's Creed Jade, so I'll let that game come out and see if he gets much exploration. Kulan Gal killed Genghis Khan, except no, he actually didn't. The comics show he only got the assist, and Altair's son Darim actually killed him. Emunet, who persuaded Cleopatra to effin' KYS, turned out to be Aya in Origins. Finally, though, we are left with one not eliminated, Leonius, who killed the Roman Emperor Caligula in the 1st century. Leonius has had pretty much no further elaboration since Assassin's Creed 2. Personally, I would love to see Rome fully explorable in its prime, which Leonius would be a great vessel for, and Caligula would make for an effectively nasty villain per his cruelty and extreme self-indulgence, not dissimilar to Cesare Borgia. Often I do like a nuanced and nearly understandable villain, but sometimes it's just fun to see a really bad person getting taken down a peg. With a dagger. Over and over in rapid succession if they're nasty enough. Penultimately, and a very easy choice considering just how little time we got to spend with this guy, Aguilar de Nerha from the movie. See, a typical movie's already much shorter than a typical game, and Assassin's Creed, the movie, made the mistake of spending most of the runtime in the modern day, so we got shafted a chance to get to know this dude very well. Simply enough, I want to know more. The premise could even be just that his descendant Callum Lynch is exploring more of his memories, since the franchise has shown zero interest in following up on that dude following the movie's critical and commercial underperformance. The biggest stumbling block about adapting Aguilar is that Michael Fassbender is probably too expensive for his performance or even just his likeness to be reasonably budgeted for a game, so he would simply have to have a different face. That wouldn't be the end of the world, considering it wouldn't be the first time this happened in the series, and also that Michael Fassbender is sort of in the same genre as lots of other normative white Hollywood type men. This is not to insult him, no, since he's the kind of handsome and rugged that could probably pin me down, and I'd probably turn to putty in his hands, getting lost in his eyes. Fuck, there goes whatever that thought was. The final entry is kind of a ballsy inclusion on my part, but I'm going with him because it would be an even ballsier move for Ubisoft to actually use him. The Wanderer. This character has not been given a name and has no images. He literally exists only in a single line buried in the database in Assassin's Creed Unity on a list of possible sages, which are genetic reincarnations of Aita if you need a refresher. Quote, "The Wanderer, born Judea. Status, believed to have encountered Christ en route to Golgotha. All references to this sage are anecdotal, however, awaiting further information." You can probably see why I'm calling this a ballsy move. Jesus in Assassin's Creed canon, and also probably real life, was not divine. There are no true gods in Assassin's Creed. Instead, he was simply someone in possession, for a time, of at least one, though most likely two, pieces of Eden. To explain the Wanderer's potentially fascinating story, I need to break down the things we do know about the Nazarene street preacher. In Assassin's Creed 1, Al-Mualim implies Jesus used the illusory powers of an apple of Eden to purportedly turn water into wine. In Assassin's Creed 2, the Truth shows firmly that he had at least a Shroud of Eden in his possession, which the Proto-Templar Order of the Ancients stole from him, having him crucified. His disciples stole back the Shroud to try and use its healing powers to resurrect the old MCJC, but Shrouds of Eden cannot bring back the dead, so it wouldn't have worked. However, this story would have proven quite useful, so the Order of the Ancients used the tale of a supposedly resurrected Son of God, Christianity, as one of their favorite means of controlling the populace. The Wanderer comes into this in an interesting place. One, since he was a sage, he too has a persona mistakenly remembered as a god years after Aita's original death. Technically, Aita is remembered by humanity as multiple different mythological/divine beings, but that's not the point right now. This crossover would have been an interesting foil. By crossing paths with Jesus literally being taken to be killed, you could also make an interesting setup for a memory. If the Wanderer were also a member of the Hidden Ones, a relatively young organization since Bayek had only founded it roughly 80 years prior, give or take depending on when exactly they decide to place Jesus' death in Assassin's Creed canon, then it would give a reason why he's crossing paths. Let's also say he, as a Hidden One, is trying to get the Shroud from the Order of the Ancients, but Jesu Christo is the only other person who knows the Shroud's current location, so the Wanderer literally would have to attempt one desperate last conversation with Jesus as he's being led to his crucifixion before he's too murdered to share that information. That would be a very memorable sequence. Now, is Ubisoft ballsy enough to actually do that? I honestly think these games have gotten as far as they have with these topics because they all require a degree of media analysis that most fundamentalist outrage is, bluntly, too anti-intellectual to actually catch. Now, if Ubisoft completely glossed over that, never mentioning any of it in the marketing and letting it hit its launch normally, then any evangelical backlash could actually just help serve as extra publicity for the game post-launch. The point is, this could be some fascinating and actually groundbreaking storytelling for a series that sometimes likes to tread water within the same familiar tropes. There you have it, 10 fellas who could maybe pull a Basim and lead a really interesting game. Realistically, would Ubisoft actually do such a thing for any of them? Probably not. Would you have picked any of these characters? Realistically, I would also say most of you would have picked differently. Though do tell me your choices, I'd love to see where we overlap. Feel free to do the like thing and the subscribe thing. My next episode of A Briefish History of Assassin's Creed is all about Syndicate, so you probably don't want to miss that if you made it this far. I've also dropped some links in the description if you're so inclined to poke around on my videos a bit further. Thanks for watching, and I hope to ramble with you again next time.